The film begins in 2005 in Peoria, Illinois, where we meet Earl Stone, an 88-year-old veteran, who enjoys his profession as a flower grower and cultivates luxurious flowers, and is admired for his crossbreeding of river flowers. The next day he is attending a conference, where we can see that Earl is very popular among the flower lovers community. Meanwhile, Earl notices a stand promoting an online flower shop, but is pessimistic about it. Earl then wins the 2005 NDL Gold Medal for his Illinois Majestic Rose. He also gave small talk and jokes during the event. Meanwhile, his daughter Iris was remarrying elsewhere, while his granddaughter Ginny was initially optimistic Earl would attend, but his ex-wife Mary knew he would eventually disappoint everyone. 12 years later, an online flower business has put Earl out of business, and his house was taken by the bank. He visited his granddaughter, Ginny, after he became homeless, to attend her wedding rehearsal, and she was delighted that her grandfather had attended the event. Shortly after his arrival, his daughter Iris and ex-wife Mary also showed up with Ginny's dress. Upon seeing him, Iris became so upset that she ran back to the car, while Mary started to fight with him, which annoyed Ginny and her fiancé before they all left. A friend of Ginny's fiancé then approaches Earl after learning that he has experience traveling to 41 states without a ticket. Handing him a business card, he tells him he knows someone who hires chauffeurs, hoping it will help with his granddaughter's wedding, and Earl accepts. He went to a tire shop, where Mexican drug dealers loaded a duffel bag into his truck, handed him a cell phone and told him not to use the phone and not to look at the bag and just to park the truck somewhere and come back an hour later. He followed the instructions, got the cash, left the car for an hour and came back. Then he attends Ginny's wedding, who thanks him for the flowers he brought. The next day, he bought a new truck, as he is going to deliver again, and as usual they asked him to abide by the orders, and they also handed him a new phone and broke the old one. Meanwhile, a DEA special agent named Lori's teams up with a new agent named Colin to try to catch drug dealers trying to enter the United States. The latter and his accomplice, Trevin, also managed to capture a member of the cartel named Louis, and found quantities of drugs, $425,000 in cash, and 3 unlicensed firearms in his home. Since Louis was facing a life sentence, he decided to cooperate with the Drug Enforcement Administration by using him as an informant to uncover drug dealers. The next day Earl goes to the bank to get his house back from foreclosure by paying off all his debts. Then he visits VFW and finds it was gutted by a fire and no one was hurt. But unfortunately the insurance companies don't care about them, which makes Earl feel sorry, because everyone gave up on the veteran's place. Then later that day, he went back to the tire shop for another delivery, this time with a bigger load. The Mexicans reminded him to stick to the rules and told him to keep his eyes open, but this time he was curious about the contents of the shipment, so he stopped and tried to open the bag, which of course contained a lot of cocaine, which shocked him. Once the bag was closed, an officer appeared asking him if he needed any help, as the officer wanted to check what was in the back of the car. And luckily Earl had a few bags of groceries on hand. He told the officer that he was going to hand it over to his nephew. When the officer's dog started barking, the officer thought the dog just wanted to pee. Meanwhile, Earl took the opportunity to apply an analgesic ointment, and when the dog came, he made him sniff it to prevent him from smelling the cocaine, and thus he miraculously survived and was able to deliver the shipment and get more money than before. Meanwhile, in Mexico, the head of a cartel called Latin was telling one of his men named Julio that this time Earl would send 110 kilograms worth $2,700,000, and so he wanted Julio to travel with him and keep an eye on him, because Earl could be a great mule for them. But Julio does not seem happy with the job. At that time Earl donated some money to VFW. Then they throw a big reopening party, and Earl emerges as a hero, as he contributes to the education of his granddaughter Ginny, and attends her graduation party, which makes Mary admire him again. But she seems to be suffering from some kind of disease. The next time Earl heads to the tire shop, he meets Julio and his partner, Sal. He explained to him that he must carry out his orders, and while driving on the road, Earl saw a family whose car had a flat tire. He broke the rules and stopped to help them, and when he managed to deliver the shipment, Julio contacted Chief Latin and told him that Earl was not following the rules, but the chief asked him to let Earl work his way. Meanwhile, Lewis gave the manifest to the customers, and then learned the codes for each mule, their routes, and loads of goods. The agents began collecting clues about his identity, and all they knew was that he transported more than 100 kilograms of drugs to Chicago a month and had a black van. On the other hand, the men told Latin that Earl had broken the record by carrying 282 parcels in one load. So Latin wanted to meet the Earl, so he summoned him to Mexico and met him there, and he threw a big party in his honor. Meanwhile, the DEA had ambushed a suspected hideout, but they only caught 2 people. They also found some bags of cocaine. Meanwhile, Ladin was playing with his favorite gun, before he was suddenly killed by one of his men, Gustavo. Then the latter asked to see Julio and told him that the DEA was close to them and that now he would control the business. When Earl was buying a burger, Julio and some of his men stopped his car, then got in the car and told Earl to follow them, until they stopped in the woods and told him to get out. Beck, a member of the gang, warned him not to come on time, leave on time, and not stop unscheduled. Then they show corpse, and Julio tells him to stick to the rules, or the same will happen to him. Through wiretapping, they were able to determine the mule's path and destination. So this time the team went in a secret car to capture the mule, as they stopped the suspicious black van. Unfortunately, they did not find anything in it, and then they released the man. Confidential informant Louis also calls Bates and tells him he has information that the mule will be staying at the hotel. So the team went there, and as soon as they arrived, they found a suspicious person, so they arrested him. But they only found 15 grams of methamphetamine, while Earl was watching them from the curtains. The next morning Earl went to the coffee shop and met Bates, had a short conversation with him and gave him advice about his family, telling him not to be like me. Then he left. While he is driving, Ginny suddenly calls him and tells him that Mary is in the hospital, but she is allowed to go home to be cared for as she is in a very critical condition after treatment has been delayed. But Earl was just beginning his first journey under the leadership of the new chief. However, he disappeared and decided to return to see his family, so he went to Mary and apologized for everything he had done. Meanwhile, Beck and his partner tried to contact him several times, but without a response. As for Louis, he informed Bates that the cartel had lost contact for a week with the mule carrying drugs worth $1,200,000. So Bates went to inform his boss about it, but the latter told them that they wasted a lot of time, so he wanted to end the operation. At Bates' insistence, he gave him one last chance. At that time, Earl was at Mary's bedside, who told him that his presence with her meant a lot to her, and he, in turn, told her that he loved her. Shortly after Mary died, Iris invited him to spend Thanksgiving night with them as a family. He promised to come and then resumed the delivery. When the gangsters who were supposed to follow Earl's truck found out about it, they chase him until he stops his truck and beat him up. He explains that his wife is dead. Then Beck calls the new boss Gustavo and tells him that Earl had good reason for disappearing, but their new boss had a different opinion and wanted to kill Earl. Meanwhile, the DEA overheard the conversation, and they get information about Earl's car, while Earl resumed delivering contraband with some scars on his face. After Bates had information about Earl's truck, and with the help of a helicopter they chased after him, as Bates and his team blocked the road and managed to stop the truck. Bates is surprised to realize that the mule is Earl, when he seems to feel miserable because he has been given so little time to spend with Mary and his family. During the trial, Mary's lawyer attempts to portray him as a desperate, broken war hero who tried to provide for his family. Not only did the gang take advantage of his good nature, but also his advanced age, but Earl stopped them and pleaded guilty to all charges. Then as he is leaving for a federal prison, he tells Iris and Ginny that there is a time when he can buy anything, but he couldn't buy time. At least we'll know where to find you, Iris said. The movie then ends with a scene where Earl plants flowers in the prison garden. If you want interesting movie recaps like these, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.